Hey, Scott, I'm doing well, thanks.
So last night, another Republican candidates debate. Why don't you give us your headline and assess how the candidates are doing here?
Well, I didn't get to see this debate. I'm going to have to play it back this weekend when I get home. I was traveling, but I've read all the reports on it. But obviously, they're all going after Perry, and frankly, some of the things he said, like about Social Security, I really appreciate someone trying to tell the truth. You can argue about whether he said it as diplomatically as he should, but I've been talking about the need to change the financing of Social Security for years. So, well, we're in the thick of things, and I think that's what we need to do. Is I think we'll see what the candidates are made of as more pressure is applied.
The Ponzi scheme line in his book and repeated at the previous debate and last night as well seems to be the sticking point. Obviously, I think most folks on that stage agree the funding cannot be sustained long term and there's reform necessary, but the idea that that it is a Ponzi scheme in nature or that it is by every measure a failure seems to be the most controversial of his comments. Do you disagree with either of those statements?
Well, I think if you're just referring to how Social Security is being financed, you can honestly call it a Ponzi scheme. I mean, a business who had a pension fund like that they would be in jail. I mean, you can't do that kind of thing legally where you don't keep the money that you put in it, and that's what we've done for years. Where I think Perry needs to differentiate is people have paid into Social Security. It's a promise we have to keep. So that's our challenge, is how do we fix Social Security, protect the promise, but make sure that younger workers have better choices that cost less money, and I think we can do that.
How about advice to the other candidates that seem to be licking their chops a little bit, as this is a moment of Perry, a window, basically, to sort of stop the juggernaut. Would you have advice for the other candidates on being careful on their attacks on Perry regarding this issue?
Well, I think if there's a candidate without a plan to fix and save Social Security, their criticism doesn't go over well with me, because if they think Social Security is fine, if they should leave it alone, or they want to say it's not a Ponzi scheme, we just need to. I want to hear what they have to say, and I'm looking to hear from these candidates real policy proposals. I want to know they understand principles, the difference between a Social Security plan that makes people dependent on the government and one that makes them free in retirement. Those are the kind of things I'm looking for. So just criticism of Perry for speaking out doesn't impress me at all.
You endorsed Mitt Romney in the 2008 cycle. Does that mean that he has a leg up in the endorsement effort this time around from you?
No, not at all. The field was very different. The times were different. I think he probably was the best candidate in the field last time. But it's very different this time, and I think the situation in our country is much more urgent. I'm taking a fresh look at all the candidates, and we need candidates who understand American principles of exceptionalism. We need candidates who have character, they have courage to speak out and tell the truth, and that they're competent, or they have the skills to lead the largest and most complex organization in the world. I mean, that's not someone who can just give a good speech. I mean, we need someone with some real substance and character, and what I'm really looking for now is boldness and courage to speak out and tell the truth.
Tim Pawlenty yesterday, through his endorsement towards Mitt Romney, now becomes his national co-chairman as well. Does that give Romney a leg up in this effort, do you believe?
I don't know. Pawlenty seems like a really good guy. You know, the Bobby Jindal also went for Perry. I think you'll see dueling endorsements over the next few months from folks. And while it may make a little difference, I think ultimately it's going to depend on the candidates to impress the voters.
You recently had a forum where all the candidates pledged their support for the Tea Party. Last night, the Tea Party was actually a co-sponsor with CNN of the debate. My heart was warm the entire night, thinking, "My gosh, what a long ways this movement has come, to the point where now the Tea Party sentiment is represented at a debate of conservative candidates on stage with CNN of all networks, for crying out loud." So between your forum and the pledge of support from the candidates and last night's debate being a co-sponsor, we've come a long way, haven't we?
We have. CNN televised our forum, and our forum was not a Tea Party forum, although they called it that. Everywhere I show up now, whether it's church or the grocery store, they call it a Tea Party meeting. But to see CNN cover this, give it fair and decent coverage, we gave the candidates 20 minutes on stage to tell us what they believed, what they were going to do. So the way I phrased it to them is, we're going to give you enough rope to either hang yourself or pull yourself up. And we learned a lot about the candidates, and I hope we'll see more forums like that where we can get into more detail. But the Tea Party is just a cross-section of Americans, thousands of citizen activists around the country. It's no one organization, despite what the Democrats and some in the media are trying to do to demonize it. They're trying to create a boogeyman they can put around the necks of Republicans, but I think you're going to see that the activism from citizens is much larger than any one group.
Do you sense that all the candidates on that stage, in their heart of hearts, are Tea Party conservatives? Or is this, I know they've all pledged their support to the sentiments of the Tea Party, but do you take them at their word on that?
Well, I think everyone is focused on the fiscal issues in our country, and really the Tea Party is really a broad cross-section of political ideologies that are concerned about the spending, the borrowing, the debt, and just the growth of government. So you see America uniting. Like over 70% of Americans believe we need to balance our budget. And I think generally the candidates believe that. It's just the sense of urgency they have is going to vary. I believe 2012 may be our last chance to turn things around. So now is the time to really tell the truth, to challenge Americans to help us save our country, because I really think that's what's at stake. This is not just another election.
How important is South Carolina? You're, of course, a senator from South Carolina, and you've got early primary state. What role will South Carolina play in picking the Republican nominee and our next president?
Well, for the last couple of decades, the Republican who wins South Carolina is the one who is our nominee. That may not always be true, but after we have Iowa caucuses, we have the New Hampshire primary, and South Carolina is the first in the South primary. But immediately after that, you start seeing Florida, other large states coming in. So South Carolina will play a role, and as it turns out, we have a pretty good cross-section that reflects a lot of what Americans believe, particularly Republicans, on the conservative issues, whether they be fiscal issues, social issues, or just defense issues. So we want to play a part, and we're going to get the candidates to come as often as we can, but it's a long marathon, and really but I'm anxious to make sure we get a candidate who can not only beat President Obama, but can help turn our country back in the right direction.
When will your endorsement come for one of these candidates?
Scott, I'm likely to wait longer this time. Not that I think it matters that much. I mean, people are interested in my opinion, just like I'm interested in theirs. But I'm going to wait to probably till December or January, or unless something else that comes up. I'm going to comment, just like you asked me about Social Security, when things come up in the race. But I want to hear what these candidates say about the spending in Congress for next year, what they say about the recommendation that comes out of the super committee. I think the issues that we face over the next few months will help determine which candidates have the courage to really speak out and tell the truth. The
president sent a bill finally up to Congress regarding his jobs plan. And surprise, surprise, it's paid for with tax hikes. I know that must have come as a big surprise to you, huh?
Well, the president doesn't understand free market economics, and I say that with there's not a personal assault on the president, but over the last month I've visited lots of businesses, production plants, oil rigs, coal mines. Everywhere I go, I hear that the president's policies, the regulations that are coming out are just killing jobs. I mean, we really don't need to do anything except stop what's going on right now. The threat of Obamacare, the Dodd-Frank regulatory system, an EPA rule that just came out that electric utilities don't have a time to adopt to, is closing coal-fired plants around the country. That means many in the mining business are going to lose their jobs. It's really frustrating and sad to see people losing their jobs. I mean, Bank of America, I mean, a lot of those layoffs are related to the regulatory structure that the Dodd-Frank bill set up, and deciding that we're going to fix the prices of what they can charge when people use debit cards. Now, I don't like to pay a fee when I use a debit card, but it's part of the free enterprise system is to let the market set the rates. now the government has stepped in, and you may lose 30,000 jobs from one large bank. Scott, it's just it is really heinous of what's going on out there. That we don't have to raise taxes, we don't have to create a jobs training program. We just need to get the federal government from smothering our economy with this big wet blanket of regulation and taxes. And, well, it's really bad out there, but it's not because American free enterprise system is not working. It's because the government has really thrown a wet blanket on top of it.
Seems like there is a concern over, flat out opposing the president's plan here, despite the fact that, again, it is all tax hikes. GOP leaders seem to be welcoming, I guess, to the jobs plan, at least saying, hey, we want to work with the president, we want to figure something out here. Is everybody too afraid in leadership to just, flat out oppose this?
Well, we know what the president's doing. He's trying to create a situation where if the Republicans support his jobs plan, then we own the economy with him. Or if we oppose it, then for the next year and a half, he can blame us for the economy not getting better. But frankly, I think we need to take a bolder stand. This jobs plan is just nuts. I mean, it's what he's doing is creates more government spending to protect, in many cases, more government union jobs. He's going to raise taxes, and where he raises it, I'd love to have a flat rate without any loopholes or credits or subsidies because I've proposed it. But the president's never supported a plan like that. He just wants to target different companies, different tax breaks that poll well, and I'm not going to go along with it. Frankly, I'm going to do everything I can to try to stop any new jobs plan until there's a moratorium on new regulations. It doesn't make any sense for the government to be killing jobs on one side and then raising taxes to help create jobs on another. The president is not acting responsibly, and we have to try to stop him.
Now, we know from various reporting that the plan of the president and the whole campaign is to run against Congress. That's why he did the speech he did last week in the House chamber to a joint session. Their whole strategy is that, obviously suggesting you pay for this with tax hikes is provoking a fight with the Republicans, knowing full well that, I don't know that he has much hope that this is going to pass. I think the idea is have a better strategy to try to stop his political free-for-all. Do you agree?
Right. I mean, he will run against Congress. He's going to try to blame us, make us Tea Party Republicans, and he can't run on his record. So he's got to go negative. All of his promises have not come true. I mean, none of them have really, and he is going to have to find someone to blame. And he's been trying to blame Tea Parties. He's going to try to blame the Congress. So we need to get ready for a president who is going to try to distract attention from his record.
All right, two other issues we may or may not be hearing more about I want to ask you about before we go, and one is we've learned now that the administration officials went ahead with giving government dollars to the Solandra solar group despite a lot of warning signs, and now they're defaulting on a multi-$100 million loan guarantee by the federal government. It surprised you that they went ahead knowing what we knew about the economic condition of this company?
No, I think the administration has been reckless pushing their own agenda, and we pump so much money into this so-called green energy. The fact that GE pays no taxes that the president complains about all the time, and a lot of that came from a stimulus bill that gave huge credits to companies that create wind and other alternative energy sources. But we gave $500 million to this one solar company that went under despite really a bad business plan. And that just happens when government tries to pick winners and losers, tries to change markets with its own wishes. And we've wasted a lot of taxpayer money, lost credibility as a government, I think. And the government cannot micromanage our economy, and that's what this president's trying to do. It's costing us trillions and trillions of dollars, millions of jobs. We have got to defeat this president, not because he's a Democrat, but because he's hurting our country.
So do you think we're going to hear more about that issue in this campaign? Should we hear more? And I also want to ask you the same about Operation Fast and Furious, the government-sponsored gun running.
Well, the things that could be brought up are so numerous that it's really hard to pick. When you go down the list of companies, small companies particularly, that are having to close. Like I heard, a small orchard that makes cider. They've had a process of making cider for years, generations, the third family generation. They have to close because the government says they have to buy a $40,000 stainless steel tank instead of what they've been doing. A small gas station in a rural area closing because they don't have the money to dig up their tanks, which are not leaking, and replace them with the new regulatory things. You go around the country, one thing after another. We're going to run against the president on his own plan and his own promises that have not been kept. And hopefully people who know, particularly businesses that are being hurt, will take a stand and fight against this, because the president sold out to unions and radical environmentalists, and they are killing jobs in our country.
Senator, always a pleasure. Thanks for the time and your tireless efforts on behalf of the conservative cause. We appreciate it as always.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for your tireless effort as well.
Good to talk to you. We'll talk to you soon.